Alright, you have seen a number of ways to select elements so far, and in some cases, a number of different ways to make the same selections. So now you may be wondering, okay, but how do I know which is the right one to use? Good question. Part of the answer is going to be shaped by the HTML you have to work with. For example, are there IDs on the elements you want to select? Do you want to select all the elements of a tag name? Another big concern is browser support. Most likely some of your users are not going to be looking at your site with the latest modern browsers. Now the methods we have covered so far have good support across browsers. However, the further into web development you go, the more you start to realize that there are a few JavaScript features that are supported by some browsers, but not others. And this could lead to some of your users experiencing bugs. Also, the JavaScript landscape is constantly changing. So what didn't work 2 years ago is now standard practice in many cases. So it's very useful to have some places to help you keep up with current best practices. And there are a couple of great resources I would like to show you to help you evaluate the tools you wish to use for your projects. The first one is the Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN. This site has all the methods we have discussed and so much more. So let's look up get elements by class name, for example. And at the top of the page, the heading shows that this is a method of the document object that we learned in the previous lectures. And there's a short paragraph describing what it does, then the formal syntax right below. After the formal syntax, you can also find more detailed explanations with bullet points. And below that, there are some examples of how you might use this method in different cases. Now, browser compatibility is the key to decide whether you can use this method or not. So here we see that all current major desktop browsers allow you to use this method. And finally, right above, there is a link to the specification for this method. So I highly recommend getting used to reading the specification, because it's the definitive description of how this method is supposed to behave across all browsers. Now, to be honest, I think these MDN pages take a little practice to read and take in, but only at the beginning. It gets easier the more you do it. Spending some time on the site will pay off in a big way in your quest to learn JavaScript. Now, I just want to show you one more thing about this page, and that is the left sidebar. Notice at the top it says document, and this refers to the global document object we have been talking about and using. And here's a list of properties and methods you can use with document. Each of these are links to explanations of what each method or property is and does. So try to keep in mind this website, or just try to remember the letters MDN, so you can find your way back here when you need it. So now let's look at one more resource called caniuse.com. If you go to that URL, you'll see a search bar at the top of the page, and here you can type any JavaScript keyword or method or any CSS feature. So let's type in the const keyword that we have been using to define variables. And right below, you can see the list of browsers that support this keyword. So this row here represents the current releases of all these browsers. And as you can see, it's mostly green across the board, which means that they all support the const keyword. And up next, I'll teach you how to manipulate the text content of any HTML element using JavaScript.